Totemist. Good evening, dear mortals. I am the totemist. Long ago, I lived countless human lives in my dreams and faced unfathomable horrors. Tonight, I shall share a few of those with you. May you live in peaceful times. The 19th floor. Everyone in Manila knows about Majestic Tower. Not because it's particularly tall or impressive. There are dozens of newer, shinier buildings in Makati's business district, but because of the 19th floor. My cousin Dino works security there, and he swears he's heard things at night. Strange tapping sounds, tiny footsteps, whispers in an ancient language that no one speaks anymore. The Spanish built on sacred ground, he told me once, his voice low, even though it was just us having lunch at Jollibee. The duendes never left. They just moved upward as the city grew. If you look at Majestic Tower from across EDSA, you can see it clearly. The windows on the 19th floor are half-sized, like they were designed for children, or something smaller. No one ever talks about why there's no button for the 19th floor in the elevators. The building management claims it's storage space, or mechanical floors, depending on who you ask. I'm Jasmine, by the way. My best friend Kay and I run a small TikTok channel about urban legends in the Philippines. Nothing special, just the two of us visiting supposedly haunted places with a camera and too much fake confidence. We had maybe 300 subscribers, mostly friends from university who watched out of loyalty more than interest. That changed after the 19th floor. This is going to blow up, Kay said, showing me her phone with the building's image on Google Maps. No one's ever filmed inside that floor before. Because it's trespassing, I reminded her. And also, duendes might eat our faces. Kay rolled her eyes. Don't tell me you actually believe that stuff. It's just stories parents tell to keep kids from wandering off. I didn't believe. Not really. But I'd grown up with my Lola's warnings about the little people who lived in the spaces humans forgot. Under houses, in hollow trees, between walls. The duendes who would pinch children who didn't say tabi tabi po when passing their homes. Who could curse you with illness if you disturbed their rest. So, how would we even get in? I asked, already knowing I'd go along with whatever plan she had. Kay had that effect on people. She grinned and held up a key card. Dino's your cousin, right? 2 nights later, we were inside Majestic Tower at 1 a.m., dressed in black like the amateur urban explorers we were. Dino had reluctantly given us his spare access card, making us promise a dozen times that we'd stay away from the security cameras and be out before the morning shift arrived at 6 a.m. If you get caught, I don't know you, he warned. And Jasmine, your mom will never speak to me again. We'll be careful, I promised, not mentioning our actual destination. The lobby was dimly lit at night, the security desk empty, while Dino made his rounds on the upper floors. We slipped into the service elevator, our hearts racing as the doors closed. Ready to meet some duendes? Kay asked, hitting the button for the 22nd floor. Our research, if you could call reading old forum posts research, suggested there might be maintenance access from there. Just don't forget to say tabi tabi po when we get there, I said, half joking. Of course. Kay held up her phone, already recording. Hello, cave explorers. We're inside the infamous Majestic Tower, about to uncover the mystery of the 19th floor. Cave Explorers was our channel name. Kay thought it sounded mysterious and adventurous. I thought it sounded like we explored actual caves, which we definitely didn't. Tonight, she continued, now using her narrator voice, we'll find out if the legends about duendes living in the hidden floor are true. Some say the little people have been there since before the Spanish arrived, guarding ancient treasures. Others claim they're spirits of children who never grew up, trapped between worlds. I say, if they really are here, they better be paying rent like the rest of us. I rolled my eyes at her dramatic tone, but played along. People who work in the building report hearing strange noises at night, tiny footsteps, whispers, and scratching inside the walls. The elevator dinged as we reached the second floor. The doors opened to reveal a dark, empty hallway lined with office doors. Most were accounting firms and small businesses that had long since closed for the day. We used our phone flashlights to navigate, keeping the beams pointed downward to avoid detection from outside. The floor was eerily quiet, our footsteps muffled by the thin carpet. According to the building plans we found online, Kay whispered, there should be a maintenance room near the emergency stairs. We found it eventually, an unmarked door that opened with Dino's keycard. Inside was a small room filled with electrical panels and cleaning supplies. And in the corner, partially hidden behind a tall shelf, was another door. Jackpot, Kay whispered, shining her light on the rusty padlock securing it. 15 minutes and one YouTube lockpicking tutorial later, we were staring down a narrow metal ladder that disappeared into darkness. You think this goes all the way down to the 19th? I asked, suddenly less enthusiastic about our adventure. Kay was already positioning her phone camera for the descent. Only one way to find out. I'll go first. I watched as she carefully climbed down, the light from her phone growing dimmer as she descended. After a few moments, her voice echoed up from below. It's some kind of service shaft. Come on. I followed reluctantly, counting the rungs as I went. The air grew noticeably different as I climbed lower, stale, with an underlying smell I couldn't identify. Not mold or dust or anything I recognized. Something older. We reached a small platform with another door. According to our count of the ladder rungs and our estimate of the distance between floors, this should be the 20th floor service entrance. The door opened easily into what looked like a storage room. We crept through it into an open-plan office space, completely dark, except for the glow of exit signs and the ambient light of the city filtering through the windows. Let's do a quick look around, then keep going down, Kay suggested, her camera panning across the empty cubicles. We found nothing unusual on the 20th floor, nor when we checked the 18th floor, using the same service shaft. Between them, where the 19th should have been, we found only solid concrete when we knocked on the walls of the shaft. There has to be another access point, Kay insisted. We climbed back up to the 22nd floor, then tried a different maintenance door on the opposite side of the building. Behind it was another ladder, this one older and coated with a fine layer of dust that suggested it hadn't been used in years. This looks promising, Kay said, testing her weight on the first rung. It creaked, but held firm. This shaft was narrower, forcing us to descend single file with our backs pressed against the ladder. I counted carefully. 20th floor, then lower to what should be the 19th. To my surprise, there was a small door here, rusty around the edges and secured with an old-fashioned latch rather than a modern lock. Kay looked back at me, eyes wide with excitement in the glow of her flashlight, then slowly pushed it open. The ceiling was the first thing I noticed. It couldn't have been more than 5 feet high, forcing us to stoop as we entered. The floor was bare concrete, and the walls were unpainted drywall, giving the space an unfinished appearance. There were no interior walls dividing the floor, just one large empty space extending into darkness beyond the reach of our flashlights. "Do you smell that?" I whispered. The strange odor from earlier, now much stronger. "Like cinnamon and soil?" Kay asked, sniffing. "And something else I can't place." "I was thinking more like whetstone and copper," I said. "But yeah, something else too." The air felt heavy against my skin, almost humid compared to the air-conditioned floor or floors above and below. Our flashlight beams seemed to penetrate less distance here, as if the darkness itself was thicker, more resistant. "Hello, cave explorers," Kay whispered to her camera. "We've made it to the mysterious 19th floor of Majestic Tower. As you can see, the ceiling is unusually low, and there are no signs of this floor ever being used as office space." I panned my light across the floor, noticing something odd. "Kay, look at this." The concrete wasn't smooth, like in a normal building. It was rough, with hundreds of tiny indentations that looked almost like footprints. Small footprints, no larger than a child's, crisscrossing in chaotic patterns. "Are those?" Kay began. A sound cut her off. A light, rapid tapping from somewhere in the darkness ahead of us, like tiny knuckles rapping on wood, or small feet moving quickly across a hard surface. We froze, listening. The tapping stopped, then started again, now from a different direction. "Probably just water in the pipes," Kay said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "Tabi tabi po," I whispered automatically, the childhood phrase slipping out before I could stop it. Kay gave me a look, but didn't comment. She moved forward slowly, her phone's camera light joining her flashlight to cut through the gloom. "There's something over here," she called, moving toward the far wall. I followed, keeping my light focused on the strange footprint-like indentations, watching as they seemed to grow more numerous the deeper we went into the floor. Kay had stopped at what looked like a collection of small objects arranged in a circle. At first, I thought they were toys or figurines, but as I got closer, I realized they were tiny offerings, coins, candy wrappers, small flowers long since dried, miniature bottles of alcohol like the ones served on airplanes. "Someone's been leaving gifts," I said, a chill running down my spine despite the warmth of the air. "The cleaning staff, probably," Kay suggested, though she didn't sound convinced, playing into the legend. The tapping sound came again, louder and faster this time, like dozens of tiny feet moving urgently across the floor. It seemed to be coming from all around us now. "Maybe we should go," I said, suddenly very aware of how far we were from the exit. "Not yet," Kay insisted, moving deeper into the darkness. "This could be our breakthrough video." I reluctantly followed, keeping close behind her. The ceiling seemed to get lower the further we went, until we were both hunched over, uncomfortably. "Jasmine, look at this," she whispered, but before I could answer, the tapping started again, right behind us. We whirled around, our flashlights cutting wild arcs through the darkness. For a split second, my beam caught something. A small, wizened face, with eyes that reflected the light like a cat's, teeth too numerous and sharp for its tiny mouth. Then it was gone, skittering away into the shadows with inhuman speed. "Did you see that?" I gasped. Kay nodded, her face pale in the flashlight glow. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely frightened. "Let's go," she said, already turning toward where we thought the exit was. But the tapping sounds were all around us now, a frenzied percussion that seemed to follow our movements. Our flashlight beams caught glimpses of small, darting figures, always just at the edge of visibility, never fully revealed, but unmistakably present. We started running, hunched over beneath the low ceiling, our flashlights bouncing wildly and creating a disorienting strobe effect. I couldn't tell if we were heading in the right direction anymore. The darkness seemed to shift and rearrange itself around us. "The door should be this way," Kay called over her shoulder, her voice tight with panic. Then she screamed, a sudden, shocked sound that cut off abruptly as her flashlight clattered to the ground. "Kay!" I cried, swinging my light toward where she had been. The beam caught her for just an instant as she was dragged backward into the darkness by dozens of small hands. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth open in a silent scream. Then she was gone, pulled into the gloom beyond my light's reach. Her fallen flashlight rolled on the concrete, its beam spinning in lazy circles that illuminated flashes of the scene. Tiny figures swarming around a larger form on the ground. Sharp teeth. Small clawed hands. Kay's camera phone, still recording, flung aside in the struggle. I stood, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. A high, chittering sound filled the air, like laughter, but wrong in a way that bypassed rational thought and struck directly at some primordial part of my brain. I smelled blood and something else. They were eating her, alive. "Run!" something inside me screamed. "Run now!" I turned and fled, no longer caring about direction, just needing to get away. My flashlight beam bounced wildly, occasionally catching glimpses of small, twisted shapes pursuing me through the darkness. Their footsteps were a frenzied drumbeat just behind my own. By some miracle, I found the service door. I flung it open and practically threw myself onto the ladder, climbing upward with desperate speed, my flashlight clenched between my teeth. Below me, the chittering grew louder, angrier. Small hands grasped at my ankles, my shoes. I kicked wildly, connecting with something solid that squealed in pain and fell away. I didn't stop climbing until I reached the 22nd floor. I burst through the maintenance door, slammed it shut behind me, and ran for the main elevator, no longer caring about security cameras or being caught. The ride down to the lobby was the longest of my life. I kept expecting the elevator to stop at the non-existent 19th floor, the doors opening to reveal what had taken Kay. When the doors finally opened on the ground floor, I ran past a startled Dino without stopping. "Jasmine? What happened? Where's Kay?" he called after me, but I was already pushing through the revolving doors, gulping the night air like I'd been drowning. I couldn't tell anyone what really happened. Who would believe me? The official story became that Kay and I had parted ways after meeting for dinner. She never came home that night. The security footage from Majestic Tower mysteriously corrupted, showing nothing but static for the hours we were inside. They searched, of course. Her parents put up posters. The university held a vigil. But no one thought to look on the 19th floor. the floor that officially doesn't exist. Sometimes I think about going back, about bringing lights, people, cameras, properly exposing what's in there. But then I remember the sounds, the chittering laughter, the tiny footprints in concrete, the smell and sound of Kay's insides torn apart. And I remember my Lola's most important warning about duendes. Once they know your face, the pigs were just pigs. I started working at Santos Meat Processing, the same way most people in our province find jobs, through a cousin who knew somebody. The pay was better than what I would make at the call centers in Manila, and I could stay close to home. My mother was sick, and someone needed to check on her. That someone was me, the youngest of four, and the only one who hadn't managed to escape to the city or overseas. The slaughterhouse stood at the edge of our town, a gray concrete building with no windows. From the outside, it looked almost peaceful. You'd never guess what happened inside. My first day, the floor manager, a short, muscular man named Mang Eddie, handed me thick rubber boots, a plastic apron, and gloves that reached my elbows. "You get used to it," he said, not specifying what it was. I soon learned he meant everything: the smell, the sounds, the endless conveyor of animals that entered alive and left in pieces. My job was simple. I stood at Station 3, after the pigs had been stunned and bled. I helped move them along the line to be cleaned and processed. Sometimes I'd hose down the floor when things got too slippery. Sometimes I'd help with gutting if they were short-handed. The other workers joked and chatted as they worked. They talked about basketball games, complained about their wives, shared gossip about neighbors. Their hands never stopped moving. Slice, pull, separate. Mechanical efficiency. I stayed quiet mostly, not because I was disgusted or upset. I just didn't have much to say. The work was just work. The pigs were just pigs. I felt nothing special when they came in squealing, nothing when they went silent. It was just the way things were. "You're good at this," Mang Eddie told me after my first month. "Most newcomers quit by now, or they cry or get sick." I shrugged. "It's just meat," I replied. He looked at me strangely then, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Just meat," he repeated. "Yes, I suppose that's one way to look at it." 6 months passed. The routine became comfortable. Wake up at 4 a.m., check on my mother, catch the first jeepney to the plant, put on the boots, the apron, the gloves, work until the sun was high, then work some more. Go home, shower twice to get the smell out, sleep, repeat. I stopped noticing the blood under my fingernails, stopped hearing the sounds. My mind went elsewhere during the workday, not to any place specific, just away. Numb, but functional. Then came that day. It was near the end of the shift. We'd processed over 200 pigs already. I was tired, thinking about what I'd eat for dinner, whether my mother would be awake when I got home. The pig came down the line, like all the others. Average size. Nothing remarkable. It had already been stunned and hung upside down, blood draining from the precise cut at its throat. Then it screamed. Not squealed, not grunted, screamed. The sound cut through the mechanical hum of the factory, through the dull chatter of the workers, through the numbness in my mind. It was high and sharp and wrong, like metal scraping metal, like a child in pain, like nothing a pig should make. I stepped back, nearly slipping in the wet concrete trench below. "Did you hear that?" I asked Carlo, who worked beside me. He glanced up, confused. "Hear what?" "The pig. It—" I trailed off. The animal hung motionless now, eyes empty like all the others. "You're hearing things, Pare," Carlo said, with a laugh. "Too many hours in this place?" I nodded, forcing a smile. But as I went back to work, my eyes kept returning to that pig. There was nothing visibly different about it. Same pink skin, same vacant stare. But I couldn't shake the feeling that, for a moment, it had looked directly at me, that it had known me. When my shift ended, I lingered, watching as that particular carcass moved down the line. I followed it to the cutting floor, where it would be divided into parts: ham, belly, shoulder, loin. Mang Eddie noticed me standing there. "Something wrong, Marco." "This pig," I said, pointing. "Was there anything unusual in the paperwork? Where it came from?" He checked his clipboard, frowning. "Batch 47, from the Reyes farm, same as always." He looked at me curiously. "Why?" "No reason," I said quickly. "Just wondering." The pig was just a pig. The sound was just my imagination. That's what I told myself as I rode the jeepney home, as I showered off the day's work, as I checked on my sleeping mother. But when I closed my eyes that night, I saw it again, hanging upside down, blood dripping steadily into the drain below. Only in my mind, its eyes weren't vacant. They were alert, aware, watching me. I dreamed of the slaughterhouse. In the dream, I walked through the empty building, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The processing line was still, the hooks empty, swinging slightly as if someone had just passed by. At the far end, where the livestock pens were, I heard movement, a scraping sound, like hooves on concrete. I walked toward it, though everything in me wanted to turn and run. A single pig stood in the pen, larger than normal, darker. Its eyes reflected the dim light like mirrors. "You didn't know," it said. Its mouth didn't move, but I heard the words clearly in my head. "But that doesn't excuse what you did." My throat felt dry. "What are you?" "You've heard of my kind," the pig replied. "Your grandmother would have warned you about us, aswang." In the dream, I laughed, though the sound was hollow with fear. "If you're some kind of monster, why did you let yourself be captured, slaughtered?" The pig's form seemed to ripple, like heat waves over pavement. "We don't choose when we change. The moon was wrong. I was trapped in this form." Its voice grew harder. "But that's over now. Now, I'm free, and you helped free me." "I don't understand," I said. "When you process meat from one of us, you take our power into yourself, into your hands. You open the door, and now I'm coming through." I woke up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat. The dream had been so vivid I could still smell the metallic scent of the slaughterhouse, could still feel the pig's eyes on me. "Just a nightmare," I whispered to the dark room. "Just stress." My mother called from her bedroom. "Marco, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Ma," I called back. "Go back to sleep." I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. Too early to get up, but I knew I wouldn't sleep again. I lay in bed, watching shadows move across my ceiling as cars passed on the street outside. Each shadow seemed to form a shape: a snout, a tusked mouth, eyes that watched and waited. The workday was normal. The pigs were just pigs. I kept telling myself this as I moved through my tasks, mechanical as always. But a part of me was looking at each animal differently now, searching for signs, for awareness in their eyes. "You look tired," Carlo commented during our lunch break. I shrugged. "Didn't sleep well." "Big night?" he asked with a grin. I forced a smile. "Something like that. When I got home that evening, my mother was sitting up in bed, looking through old photo albums. "Come see these," she said, patting the space beside her. "I found pictures of your Lolo's farm." I sat next to her, looking at faded photographs of my grandfather, standing proudly beside his crops and his chickens. "He never kept pigs, did he?" I asked, suddenly. My mother shook her head. "Never. He said they were bad luck." She turned the page. "He had many superstitions, your grandfather. He would never go out during a full moon. Said that was when the aswang hunted." A chill ran through me. "Did you believe those stories?" She chuckled softly. "When I was little, sure. Every Filipino child fears the aswang." She looked at me curiously. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I said. "That night, I was afraid of falling asleep. I tried to stay awake, left the lights and TV on, drank one cup of coffee after another, but exhaustion eventually won. My eyes drifted closed sometime after midnight. The dream came again. But this time, I wasn't walking through the slaughterhouse. I was hanging from one of the hooks. My ankles were bound with wire, cutting into my skin as I dangled upside down. Around me hung other people. Some I recognized from work, some strangers. All naked, all awake, all silent with terror. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. All I could do was watch as a figure approached along the processing line. It walked on two legs, but was not human. Its skin was dark and leathery, stretched over a frame too tall, too thin to be natural. Its head was somewhere between a pig and a man, with a long snout and tusks that curved upward from its lower jaw. But its eyes were the same as the pig from the line, knowing, intelligent, hateful. "You see me now," it said, its voice the same as in the previous dream. "You see what I really am." It moved closer, standing before me. In its hand was a long, sharp knife, the same kind I used every day at work. "How does it feel?" it asked. "To be the meat?" The blade touched my skin, and pain exploded across my consciousness. I felt everything. The precise cut along my throat, the warm flow of blood, the air on exposed muscles as it began to flay the skin from my chest. "I'm keeping you awake," it told me as it worked, "so you can feel what they feel, so you understand." The pain was beyond anything I could have imagined. Each cut, each separation of sinew from bone sent fresh agony through me, yet I couldn't faint, couldn't escape into unconsciousness. The creature wouldn't allow it. "Your liver will make a fine meal," it said, reaching inside me. "Your heart will give me strength. Your flesh will feed my children." I felt its hands inside my chest, felt it pulling out pieces of me, examining them with professional interest, just as I had done to hundreds of animals. "Perfect cuts," it murmured. "You taught me well." Time stretched endlessly. It removed parts of me piece by piece, placing them on trays that moved along the conveyor belt. All while I hung there, somehow still alive, still aware. "This isn't real," I tried to tell myself. "This is just a dream." The creature paused, tusked face inches from mine. Is it? Or is this the only real thing you've ever experienced? Could you even tell the difference? It continued working, butchering me with methodical precision. As it reached the final stages, it leaned close to what remained of me. Remember this, it whispered. Remember what you were part of, what you did, what was done to you. Then finally, it reached toward my eyes. I woke up screaming, my body intact but burning with phantom pain. The TV was still on, the news calmly discussing weather patterns as if the world hadn't just broken open and revealed its horrifying truths. My mother stood in the doorway, her face pale with worry. Marco, what's wrong? I couldn't speak, couldn't explain. How could I tell her that I'd been unmade piece by piece? That I'd felt what every animal in that slaughterhouse had felt? Bad dream, I managed to say. Just a bad dream. But we both knew it was more than that. Something had changed. Something had broken in me. I called Mang Eddie that morning and told him I wouldn't be coming back. He wasn't surprised. It happens, he said simply. This work isn't for everyone. The pig, I said suddenly. Batch 47. What happened to it? There was a pause on the line. Shipped like all the others, he replied. Why? No reason, I said. Goodbye, Mang Eddie. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands. Hands that had helped end so many lives. Hands that had treated living beings as nothing more than meat. My mother brought me tea, sitting beside me without asking questions. She'd always been good that way, knowing when to talk and when to simply be present. I can't work there anymore, I finally said. She nodded. There are other jobs. I don't think I can eat meat again either. At this, she raised an eyebrow. Your Lolo was the same way, toward the end. He said he'd seen something that changed him. I looked at her sharply. What did he see? She shook her head. He never said, just that he'd looked into the eyes of something that wasn't what it seemed. She patted my hand. Some things are better left in the dark, Anak. But I knew the dark couldn't contain this. The aswang, if that's truly what it was, had shown me something I couldn't unsee, had made me feel something I couldn't unfeel. Sometimes at night, I still dream of hanging upside down. Sometimes I wake up tasting blood. Sometimes I swear I hear a voice whispering, remember. From above. I first heard the clicking on a Tuesday. That's important somehow. The ordinariness of a Tuesday afternoon in June, when the heat pressed against our little house in Batangas like a living thing, hungry to get in. 5 months pregnant and alone for the third straight day, I'd been trying to nap on the couch, one hand resting on my growing belly. Ramon had been working overtime at the call center, coming home only when I was half asleep, leaving before the sun fully rose. We rarely spoke anymore, just existed in the same space, orbiting each other like cautious planets. The clicking started so faintly, I thought it was a tree branch scraping the roof. Tick, 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 a rhythm just irregular enough to be maddening, like someone tapping a pencil while deep in thought. I sat up, tilting my head toward the ceiling. Tick, tick, tick. It seemed to come from directly above our bedroom. I grabbed a broom and tapped the ceiling, expecting to scare away a lizard or a rat. The clicking stopped. I waited, standing perfectly still in our bedroom, the broom handle still pressed against the ceiling. 10 seconds, 20. Then it started again. Tick, 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 but faster now, like it was responding to me, like it knew I was listening. When Ramon came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table. a cold cup of ginger tea in front of me. "There's something in the ceiling," I said before he could even put his bag down. Ramon ran his hand over his face, exhaustion etched in the shadows under his eyes. "What kind of something?" he asked. "I don't know. It makes a clicking sound. Like this." I tapped my fingernail against the wooden table. "Tick, tick, tick. Probably just a tuco," he said, referring to the large geckos that often lived in Philippine homes. "They can get pretty big." "It's not a tuco," I insisted. "It doesn't sound like any animal I've heard before, and it responds when I tap back." Something in my voice must have worried him, because Ramon put his hand on my shoulder. "Hey," he said gently, "you're tired. The pregnancy's making you anxious. Let me check it out, okay?" I watched from the doorway as he climbed the rickety ladder to the small attic space above our bedroom. The beam of his flashlight swept across the dusty rafters as he called down to me. "Nothing here, Maya. Just some old boxes and dust." He sneezed as if to emphasize his point. "No animals, no nests, nothing." I didn't sleep that night. The clicking had stopped while Ramon was in the attic, but resumed an hour after we went to bed. Tick, tick, tick. Ramon slept through it, his breathing deep and even beside me. I stared at the ceiling until dawn bleached the darkness from our room, listening to that patient, persistent sound. The next day was the same. And the next. The clicking would start around noon, continue intermittently through the afternoon, then grow more insistent after dark. Ramon finally heard it on the fourth night, sitting bolt upright in bed at 3 a.m. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "That's what I've been trying to tell you," I replied, a strange satisfaction mixing with my fear. He got up and thumped the ceiling with a broom handle, just as I had done. The clicking stopped, then started again, mimicking the exact pattern of his taps. "That's weird," Ramon admitted, lowering the broom slowly. "I'll check the attic again tomorrow in daylight, maybe set some traps." But the next day's inspection yielded nothing. No animals, no loose boards that might creak or tap, nothing to explain the sound that now filled our home day and night. By the end of the week, the clicking had changed me. I moved through our house like a stranger, always looking up, always listening. I hadn't left home in days. The thought of leaving the clicking unattended, of not knowing what it might do in my absence, seemed impossible. Ramon started sleeping on the couch, claiming he couldn't rest with the noise. I knew it was more than that. He couldn't stand the sight of me sitting in bed all night, staring at the ceiling, occasionally tapping back at the thing above us. Sometimes he would find me like that in the morning, still awake, still watching. "You need to see a doctor," he said one morning, his voice tight with worry. "This isn't good for you or the baby." "I'm fine," I insisted, "but we need to figure out what's in our ceiling. I've checked 3 times. There's nothing there." Our voices bounced off the walls of our small kitchen, too loud in the morning quiet. Then we both froze as the clicking started again, directly above us, faster than before. Ramon left for work without another word. As soon as he was gone, I opened my laptop and typed, "clicking sound in ceiling." Most results were about pests or house repairs. But on the 3rd page of search results, I found a forum thread about Filipino-folklore. Someone had posted about a creature called the tiktik, a type of vampire that made a clicking sound as it hunted. According to the stories, the tiktik targeted pregnant women, using its long, tubular tongue to suck the life from unborn babies. The clicking sound it made was deceptive. It sounded close when the creature was far away, and distant when it was actually nearby. A cold feeling spread through my chest as I read account after account. Some were obviously embellished, but others had a ring of truth that resonated with my experience. One comment in particular stood out. My Lola said the tick-tick clicks to hypnotize the mother, makes her open windows, go outside alone at night. Then it takes the baby. I closed the laptop, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. The baby kicked, a reassuring flutter of life. Above me, the clicking continued. Tick, tick, tick. When Ramon came home that night, I showed him what I'd found. He skimmed the web pages with increasing irritation. "This is ridiculous, Maya," he said finally. "You're scaring yourself with fairy tales." "Then what's making the sound?" I demanded. "I don't know. Old houses make noises. Maybe it's the heat making the wood expand. Maybe it's an animal I can't find. But it's not some monster from your grandmother's stories." We barely spoke the rest of the evening. The clicking seemed to intensify after dark, filling the silence between us. Around midnight, Ramon finally snapped. "That's it," he said, throwing off the covers. "I'm calling my cousin tomorrow. He works construction. We'll tear open the ceiling if we have to." He stomped off to the couch, leaving me alone with the sound. Tick, tick, tick. I must have fallen asleep, eventually. I dreamed of a dark shape on our roof, its body elongated and twisted, its head swiveling to track the movement of my baby inside me. In the dream, it spoke my name in a voice like dry leaves rustling. "Maya, Maya, I'm waiting for you both." I woke with a start. The room was dark, but a faint pre-dawn light outlined the window. The clicking was faster now, almost frantic. Tick, 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 tick. And for the first time, I realized something that sent ice through my veins. The sound wasn't coming from inside the ceiling. It was coming from above the roof. Moving as if in a trance, I got out of bed. A strange calm had replaced my fear. I knew what I needed to do. I walked quietly past Ramon, asleep on the couch, and out the back door. Our house was small, but climbing onto the roof wasn't easy in my condition. I dragged a plastic chair from the patio and positioned it beneath the lowest part of the roof line. From there, I could just reach the edge of the roof tiles. The clicking grew louder as I pulled myself up, my pregnant belly making the climb awkward and dangerous. But a new certainty guided my movements. If I could just get above the sound, I would understand. I would be safe. The roof tiles were still warm from the day's heat as I carefully made my way to the center. The clicking had stopped. For the first time in a week, there was silence. I laid back against the gentle slope of the roof, looking up at the stars scattered across the night sky, and sighed with relief. Then I realized my mistake. The old story said the tick-tick sounds close when it's far away, and far away when it's close. The clicking hadn't been coming from the ceiling or the roof at all. It had been coming from above, from the sky, and now it was silent. I felt rather than heard something moving in the darkness above me. The stars seemed to shift, a patch of night sky becoming deeper, more absolute. A shape blotted out the stars as it descended slowly toward me. A voice whispered in my head, not heard, but felt, like fingers brushing the inside of my skull. "You came to me. You knew I was waiting. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged. My body felt heavy, pinned to the roof tiles by an invisible weight. The child within you is special, the voice continued. It must not be born, not as human. Give it to me now, and I will return it to you as something more. No, I managed to whisper. No, please. You will understand in time. The world is changing. The old ones are returning. Your child could be first among them. The shape above me lowered further, its edges becoming more defined. A long skeletal body, limbs that bent at impossible angles, a head that was both bird-like and horribly human. Give it willingly, the voice insisted. Cut it from your body. Offer it to the night. I will transform it, preserve it, make it eternal. I felt something cold and sharp materialize in my hand, a blade made of darkness itself. Maya! Ramon's voice shattered the trance. He was standing in our yard, looking up at me with terror in his eyes. Maya, don't move! I'm coming to get you! The presence above me recoiled from his voice. The pressure eased, and I could move again. The dark blade dissolved into nothing. Ramon, I called weakly, help me. He was already climbing up, fear giving him speed. When he reached me, he pulled me into his arms, his body shaking. What are you doing up here? He demanded, his voice breaking. You could have fallen. I looked up at the sky, but saw only stars now. The shape was gone, or hiding. It wasn't in the ceiling, I said, my voice distant to my own ears. It was above us, always above us. Ramon held me tighter. Let's get you down from here, please. He helped me back to the edge of the roof, then down to safety. As my feet touched the ground, the clicking started again, distant now, from high above the house. Tick, tick, tick. Ramon heard it too. He looked up, his face pale in the moonlight. What is that? He whispered. Something old, I replied, the strange calm still flowing through me. Something that wants our baby. He didn't argue this time. Instead, he led me inside and locked the door behind us. We sat together on the couch, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder, listening to the clicking fade as dawn approached. The next day, Ramon called his mother. By evening, our house was filled with family. His parents, my parents, aunts, uncles. My mother-in-law hung garlic and ginger in the windows. My grandmother burned herbs and said prayers. His uncle nailed iron horseshoes above every door. The clicking didn't return that night or the next. 2 months later, our daughter was born healthy and perfect. Ramon's mother stays with us now, sleeping in the small room next to the nursery. Some nights, I wake to the sound of her rocking my daughter, singing old lullabies. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I go outside and look up at the stars. I listen for the clicking, both dreading and expecting its return. It hasn't come back yet, but I know it's still out there, waiting. Because sometimes my daughter wakes in the night and stares at the ceiling with too much focus for an infant. Sometimes she makes a soft sound with her tongue against the roof of her mouth. Tick, tick, tick. And sometimes I find myself answering,